All right.
There it is.
All right. There we go. We started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. This is crazy. We don't normally meet this soon between book clubs and stuff, but we're back with another book. I think our theme for these past couple of books were like short and sweet,
Yes.
which is kind of nice. It was really nice. So our book this time, our book pick is Karen's book pick, Music for Tigers by Michelle Kadarusman. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Yeah. I talked to the girls before about how I kept on mixing it up with Kardashian all the time, but it's not that hard. You just like phonetically read the name out. It's actually pretty simple. Karen, how did you find the book?
Interview with her, and she goes, "Hi, my name is Michelle Kadarusman," and I'm like, "Perfect."
There you go. Karen, how did you find this book?
Oh, how did I find this book?
Suggested?
I think it was a suggested thing on my e-library, and it popped up, and I went, "Oh, well, this is kind of cute. Oh, it says music. Oh, maybe it's about music." And then I got excited, and I went ahead and read it, and then I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be our next book club pick, right?" And I was like, we need something kind of nice and short, and a kids book. We haven't done a lot of kids books.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be kind of different, and it had enough meat in it that we will be able to discuss some stuff. But yeah, it was just like just a recommendation thing, and I went, okay, sure, why not?
Yeah. And I think when we originally started the book club, we were trying to be very strict about the parameters. And I think throughout the years, we've kind of just loosened it up a little bit. So now we all of a sudden have the ability to be able to find these things, which I think are really cool. Because before it was always like adult fiction plus music. But now it's like, no, let's just give it a shot. And I think that's cool because we've come a long way, you guys. I looking back on our previous videos, I was like, we've done this for like over 4 years.
Has it really been 4 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
It has not. It hasn't felt like that long.
Yeah. So our first year, we only did 4 videos. And then the second year, we did 6. The third year, we did 6. Yeah. We've done like 20 something videos now, I think.
Oh.
So yeah. Yeah.
It's like crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And I remember like one of the things that Karen had mentioned about this book club was that it's easy because we just meet online.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to travel to a store and things. So it's kind of convenient for everybody. So we can meet kind of like whenever. But why don't we quickly start by how do you guys want to discuss this book? I don't read a lot of children's books. So I'm not an expert on any of this kind of stuff. I mean, Amanda's our resident expert on children's books, right?
I guess so.
I guess like how about like this? Like, what is your opinion since you've read so many like children's books, both of you guys really? Like, it's like how does this stack up to some of the other books that you find are really, really good? Like, does it flow in a good way? Like in terms of something that you would hand to one of your kids to read?
Oh yeah, I would totally give this to one of my kids. And part of it actually is because, and I said this when I first looked at this book, was actually the font on the inside is personally a beautiful font.
Yeah.
But it's because there are the serifs on the top and bottom, it helps certain kids with certain letters to see that little bit. It's nice because there's, a bit of adventure. There is historical stuff in it. There's factual and non-factual components. There's the music thing. Like all around, I just thought it was a really good one, and it's sweet and it's short, and I think kids would actually really enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're seeing sort of a trend toward really chunky books. And there are some kids that they get turned off by that. They see it too many pages and they don't want to read them. And the thing that's nice about this story is it is very succinct and it does feel very deliberately crafted. So every single chapter, something big happens. So it would make for great discussion every single chapter. And they're short chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, there was never I mean, obviously because it's a shorter book, but there was never a moment where I was reading through a chapter where I was like, okay, how long is this chapter? Because it just like, finished. I was like, oh, that's nice. It was like always, there was always like a cherry on top every chapter.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is planned so well. It wasn't like someone just writing thousands of words and be like, arbitrarily, we're stopping here. Like every beginning and end of each thing was encapsulated so you could finish a chapter and you could just talk about that chapter and that's it. And it won't like tie you up. Like it would, there's certain things that were like kind of cliffhangers, but you could literally just stop at that chapter for a day. And when you came back to the next chapter, you're like, oh, there's enough information at the very beginning of each sentence of each chapter to remind me what's going on from before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a little bit of mystery helps propel it a little bit forward as well.
Yeah.
I think definitely the mystery kept me going. And I think I ended up reading this in a couple of days just because I wanted to know. I needed to know.
I might actually take this to, because it's 2020, I might put this up for the Langley Book of the Year next year because I'm on the board for that.
I mean, I liked it. I
thought it was a great book. So
yeah, I personally liked how the author, I mean, and like I said, I don't read a lot of children's books, but I loved the 5 senses that were used constantly throughout the book. Smell, sight, touch, like all that stuff, right? It's just like constantly taste of things, right? And like especially like the pungent smell, right? You're like, it kind of smells like this, and you're like immediately you get transported to that, and like the texture of the gum trees, and like the fronds and like the palms, and like the way that she described the sky. It was so like just like sensory overload for me, and I loved it because I think in a lot of like especially more kind of high fantasy books, they just assume you know all this stuff, so they don't have to explain it in details. But like I love those details because I was like, it kind of immersed me into a lot of things, right?
So I picked this book after reading the first sentence, and it was all about how she heard the birds.
Oh yeah.
Understood Vivaldi's, was it Spring?
Spring, yeah.
Yeah.
He understood Vivaldi's Spring, and of course, you have to go and then go listen to Vivaldi's Spring, right? So you kind of get so immediately it starts with sound.
Yeah.
And that was just that was it for me. I was sold.
Yeah.
Like this is definitely something I want maybe some of my students to read as well. I mean, now that I have a copy of it, because it just like it's that kind of like I've been trying to in my lessons anyways, trying to connect, especially with a lot of my older students, trying to connect them with imagery. Like there's a lot of pieces that are like playing that are dances. So we just spend a lot of time on YouTube watching Viennese waltzes, right?
Yeah.
Watching like yubas, watching like traditional folk dances, getting excited about the imagery of it and being like, this is how it feels when you see a waltz. This is how you should do a waltz, right? And this is that nice medium, right, between someone who loves music, right, and the author helps you connect. Like the whole Vivaldi Spring. Like some of my students have actually studied that piece, like for History 9.
Yeah.
And a part of it talks about the murmuring brook and the chirping birds and everything. And there's like a storm and lightning and stuff in the first one. And you're like, oh, she talks about all of those things in this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's so nice to be able, like, I mean, it's not even like I don't like, for a lack of a better word, like, it's not as like, it's not written for an adult, but I don't mind it.
It's not.
I loved it. Yeah, like it didn't feel like they were like she was writing for a children. Like I read this and I was like, this is still written very well. The prose flow. Yeah. Like I can understand the characters. I understand how they feel. This doesn't make me feel like I'm 8 years old trying to read a 8-year-old book.
Yeah, I would also say that the best children's books can be read and enjoyed by adults as well, because you think a lot of adults might be reading these to their children. Yeah. Don't you want to entertain the parents too? You want it to be a family activity. You want it to be still readable. If you loved it when you were 12, you'll love it when you were 20. You love it when you're 30.
And it's got stuff in it that it's nice to see children's book touch upon, like a death of a pet, or Piggy is not a pet, but like the death of a close animal that you have or something in your family, and then Colin, who is autistic, and then the whole performance anxiety and the destroying of a forest because of progress and whatever. Like they're subjects that are very now, but could last for a long time, because these are all the things that are starting to be getting more attention. And it's like a children's adult book in some ways, if you know what I mean, where it's still fun, but it makes, I would hope anyway, it would make a kid think. I can see some of my 3s and 4s really, really enjoying this book. Like breaking out into one of my higher 3s that are breaking out into chapter books, who really want something with meat on it like this, but doesn't want to be overwhelmed. This would be great. Because like you said, all those discussions that are open after every chapter.
Yeah, and you could easily, if the kid liked the book and was interested, you go, cool, I have a nonfiction book on animals from Australia, and then they can kind of like go and research that themselves. Like there are things to jump off of. It's a great starting point.
It's a gateway book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love gateway books. They're the best.
Why don't we switch to, do you guys want to talk about the plot a little bit? I mean, it's not a very long plot, but we can like maybe dive into it a little bit. So essentially Louisa, or Lou, as she's known by her uncle, she's from Toronto, Canada, right?
It's a Canadian book, yay.
Yeah. And she is extremely into classical music. She wants to audition. She wants to make it into the Toronto Symphony Youth Orchestra program. I don't know much about the program, but I do know that like even with like the Greater Victoria Youth Orchestra program, right? There's auditions and you have to be, essentially good enough to make it into the program. So she's been practicing and she feels like she's kind of being like, thrown across the world, and it's getting in the way of her practicing, right? She doesn't want to be in Tasmania. She doesn't want to be in Australia in the bush. She just wants to be practicing, right? So like right from the get-go, you kind of get this glimpse that like there's this girl who's like, she's being like, it's like, this is almost like inconveniencing her to have to travel all the way to Australia, right? And I know that like there was like a little bit of that was mentioned in like even the synopsis, right? Where she's like, I would rather be practicing, right? Mm-hmm. So she like the first scene is just like she's picked up from the airport. She goes to this like middle of nowhere jungle cabin thing, right? Right? And it's kind of like she gets thrown into there. And what I enjoyed really was that the adventure slowly unraveled rather than like bam, adventure now. Like she like it was there if she wanted to read the journal. Yeah. And then it took time, it didn't happen. And then she was like, because of events, she was compelled to read it. And that's where the journey evolves. And I was like, this is great because this character has agency over what she experiences in this book right from the get-go.
Yeah, she could have so easily just sat in her room and played her violin the whole time and just like, nope, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. And you get that little hint in the beginning. She's like, I just want to practice. And then I saw the eyes staring at me, and you're like, oh, what is gonna happen next? Like that's the one thing with like these kids books. You're like, I need to now finish this, and I know I can. So and I find that all throughout, the author just kind of like plants these tiny little bits and bites where you're like, okay, now I have to read like 14 other chapters because you left it, and I want to figure out what the heck that meant. So it's like it's well done because I feel like like you said, adults would really enjoy this as well as like a super quick afternoon read. And it just makes you feel good at the end. Like I finished the book and I just like smiled. I'm like, oh, it's so cute. I love that.
Because like when you first start, you only really understand that like this is her uncle that lives in Australia, and you're like, oh, okay, so she's probably Canadian-Australian. And then as you read, it unfolds that her uncle and her mom don't agree on something very fundamental. Yeah. Right. That's why she left. And that's why she's in Canada doing her thing. And of all things that she could do, marry a Canadian, right? Right. And then Mel and like Uncle Rufus, Ruff, I guess, right? They don't meet eye to eye either because Mel actually agrees with her mom, right? And you're like, what do they agree with, right? And then there's also that the juxtaposition of Mel being extremely outgoing, inviting, and then there's Colin, right, who is autistic but extremely good at what he does, but awkward, doesn't really doesn't understand social cues, and there's that relationship there, and then Colin gets thrusted upon Louisa, right? Right, where like, oh yeah, he's gonna come over, and like it's a ploy because I really want him to make friends, right? So there's all these kind of like relationships where you're like, oh, everyone's starting off like on like a bad foot, right? And then slowly like everything kind of just like melds together somehow, right? But it's in like everything is in a very satisfying way. It didn't feel like it was like coerced or pushed in a certain way, right?
Yep. The thing that I liked with the environmental plot was that it wasn't up to her to completely solve the whole problem and save the world. It was, you are going to do one small thing and it will mean a lot to that one small thing. And that's what you can be capable of. It's a really good lesson for kids that I think it's if you do small things, if everybody does a small thing, it contributes to a whole, rather than you're the chosen one. You must save the entire Tasmanian jungle forest. You know, it was believable in that regard.
Yeah. And a lot of, I find the reactions of the adults and the kids were also like super believable. There wasn't, she was thrust into this jungle and all of a sudden she's having like temper tantrums and she's slamming doors and she's freaking out. Like she adapted, which was great. But some of the reactions she had, like when Colin was in the supermarket and then defending him, like I find those like really honest portrayals of what kids and adults could do. Because I've had conversations with parents who are like, I just want my kid's autistic. I just want them to have friends. And I totally understand that. So I found that was also really cool to see, like, almost an adult perspective when a kid is reading stuff like this as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, like, obviously she herself is a very special person, right? Like there are some cues, I mean, social and non-social cues that she picked up on, right? That even I, as a grown-up, wouldn't have picked up on. Like, there's that one scene, that part where they decide to walk away, and she's like, okay, take out your camera. This is what a genuine smile looks like. This is what, a fake smile looks like. And I was like, I wouldn't have even thought to do it that way, right? But she somehow, through her own experiences and everything, putting two and two together, realizing what's going on, like that was probably the most amount of help she could have given Colin, right? Above and beyond what anyone else could, because she understood how to help him.
Yeah.
She understood, and she didn't just say, oh, they were being fake with you. It was, here is how they are being fake. So you can identify it and you can understand that they are actually being mean to you and they're not worth your time.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool because like I learned something, right?
Yeah.
That, right. So I like essentially the biggest drama is this whole Tasmanian tiger or a thylacine. Right? It's like, are they like myth? Are they legend? Are they really out there or whatever, right? And in this book, we're led to believe that they're still alive, but it's better for humanity to not know where they are. Because if we find out, we'll just ruin their habitats, we'll just destroy them, or we'll drive them to extinction. So, like, there's this family secret, right, that Louisa stumbles upon, and it's like Uncle Rufus is like, what, your mom never told you about this? And she's like, to her credit, she's like, I'm sure they did. I was just so upset that I didn't want to listen to it.
Yeah.
But like it was like, and that's a normal experience. Everyone experiences that, right? But like, I was really glad that like she kind of owned up to that. She spoke honestly about that, and her uncle didn't be like, no, you should have listened, right? He was just like, all right, well, you don't know anything, so let's start from the beginning, right? And then you realize like, oh, this is why her mom wanted her to come. She wanted her to really understand the history of her family, that music runs deep in the family, but so does animals. So does, right? This other love that she just didn't grow up liking because I guess her parents were just so into it that she wasn't into it, right?
Yeah. And the uncle owned up to it at the end too. He's like, honestly, when I was told you were coming, I didn't want you to come because this was the worst time. Like they're bulldozing stuff. But, you know, I can admit that I was wrong. And that's a big thing for adults too, because, you know, how often do we're like, oh man, we're stuck doing that. Oh, and then we just complain about it. But to own up to being like, yeah, I totally do not want this to happen. And then turn it out for the better. So it's kind of it's interesting how they wrote the characters, because you can't really hate anybody in this book, which is interesting because every book we've had, we're like, this character was just the worst. We hated this person. Everybody in here is, I think, aside from the two little girls, everybody was great.
And relatable too. Like I mean, if you really step back and think about it, they're all flawed. They don't all have great, wonderful personalities, but it's kind of, that's what makes them so lovable. Is Luisa's very kind of nervous, but she still goes out and does things. Roof doesn't. He's just kind of, I don't know, he's just really sad right now, and he's trying to like deal with the sadness and mourning, and just like, this is not the best time. Mel's just trying to shove her son onto other people, like, here, go. The only thing, my only complaint out of the whole thing was that, to a little bit, Colin almost served as sort of the info dump.
Yeah.
And I think that was supposed to be kind of like the autistic quality, right? Where he's like, I have all of this knowledge, let me tell you everything, which is cool. And you do need to have that character. But sometimes I would just be like, okay, there's like 3 pages of him just describing the trees.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, oh, okay, right?
Although I will admit, during that part, that's the part where they're in the jungle, right? And they're So I will admit that in that part, I started looking up the trees and being like, oh, that's what that looked like. Oh, it is a little bit pink. Oh, that's kind of cool. So it was in the, I guess, the paragraph long descriptions, I actually sat down and I ended up looking up. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool looking tree. Yeah. That's what the bush like. Oh, that's a scary snake. So it's also interesting in that way, because I got into it that way too.
It's actually, you know, it's funny. I did the exact same thing. I think I Googled so many images. I was like,
actually,
what does that look like? What does that tree look like?
And that was one of the things, was like, I love that this book was not in like America or London or something Western European states kind of thing. Like I'm trying to think of any of our books that were not in like the States or Canada or one of those major ones. I don't, in my knowledge of a lot of books that I've read, I don't usually read a book that is set in Tasmania. Yeah. So that was,
I think I've read a book set in Tasmania.
Right? It's different, and I think that's one of the things I liked about it too. It's different, and then you bring up that whole what's it called, a bianjib or
bunny yip.
Yeah, a bunny yip. And I looked and I was like, okay, so is this something she made up for the book, or is this legit?
It's a legit thing. Yeah, it's a legit thing.
Yeah, it's a real like Australian lore, and I'm like, I am learning so much about Australia, Tasmania. This is so cool. So I found that was really neat too. Was going through and being, because we don't know any of this stuff, not being from there. So yeah, that was really neat too. And I know that once some of the kids read that, they'd be like, "You're a bunyip. No, you're a bunyip. No, I'm gonna get the bunyip to get after you." You know, so
that's fine. They can say a lot worse.
Right, actually, yeah.
You know, it's funny, Karen, because like once you mentioned it, I was like, yeah, you're right. He was the info dump. But when I first like went through that section, I was like, oh, this is his autism, right? Like he's so meticulous about every single detail.
Yeah.
Right. that he has to talk about everything, right? Because he needs to be like, it's for him, right? It's therapeutic. He needs to kind of just release all this information. And there's also like a pride to knowing all this stuff, right? Being so young, but being so well versed in everything.
I loved how he was like, I have a 5-star rating.
Yeah.
43,
no, like,
34.
to be back 43 5-star rating on TripAdvisor.
I'm the
it's so
guy, you know.
But well, that's the thing is like I think the three of us have taught kids on like different parts of the spectrum of autism.
Yeah.
Numbers mean things, right? That's like cumulative, right? You're like that's important. Like that part where like he's just like there's like an 80% chance that you won't get bitten by a snake on this, right? And she's like, can you just lie to me? He's like, oh, okay. On this like trip, there will be absolutely 0% that you're gonna be like bitten by a snake. Right? It's just like, right? And I was like, oh, this is so cute. Because for him, he really likes those numbers, right? Numbers make sense. They're factual, right? They're black and white. You can look at that, right? So I was like, oh, okay, I can believe this character. I do, but yeah, I do agree. It's like, yeah, he's like the history background narrator, everything, definition. Like he's like the thesaurus and the dictionary of the book.
Yeah. But I didn't find him overwhelming. Like I read it and I got really into like, oh, okay, this is really cool. This frond over here, this snake, this whatever. And then it just immediately moves to the next one. So I think she's made it the paragraphs enough so that kids will read it. And it's just at that point where they're like, I don't want to read this anymore, that she's like, okay, now moving on to the next one. So it's well crafted in that kind of, because even, that sense, Sorry, I don't know what the ending of my sentence was there.
Overwhelming is good because you do get a sense of what it's like to interact with someone who is like this. And no wonder he struggles making friends, because this is the way that he operates. And so how can we be more empathetic with somebody that knows a lot of things? Like they just need somebody to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the big thing was just I was really glad, and I'm not an expert on kids with autism, but I was really glad that the author didn't like try to like round the corners of his like personality, right? Like in the grocery store, like he got upset. He's like, no, we have to get all this stuff. Yeah. Right? It has to be this order, right? And he gets frustrated and he got flustered and stuff. Like I was really glad that she put that in. Because I was like, that's how some of these kids are sometimes, right? Once they get flustered, they don't know what to do. Yeah. And some people think that that's acting out. Some people that think that they're being aggressive. It's no, like they're freaking out inside, right? Because it has to be in this order because they're lost without it. I was really glad like that they had that moment there. I was really glad also that like, at that moment, right, an adult came in and like Uncle Rufus was like, this is normal. This is his way of coping and de-stressing. Please give him the time to calm down. It's totally okay, like Louisa, right? This is how it is, right? And I'm glad there was that situation where she dealt with it the best way that she could. And then there was an adult that informed her, right? This is what's going on. Don't worry, it's okay. This happens, but sometimes he needs to do these things to calm himself down. He's not upset with you. He's not upset with himself. Like he just needs the space. Give him space, right? Thank you for standing up for him. Thank you for being with him, right? So I really like that because I was like, you know what? Kids will read this and they're like, oh, like so and so is like this sometimes. So maybe he's not upset with me. Maybe he just needs some time to be alone. Yeah. And I can like give him that time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's great. I also like the fact that like by the end of the book, she was just like, practice pish posh. I want to save the Tasmanian tiger, and then like it's like it kind of came full circle, right? Because like she learned like the Waltzing Matilda, which was like an anthem, and she's like, wait, this is gruesome. Yeah. Right? But she learned.
I didn't know the history of Waltzing Matilda until I read in this book. I'm like, oh, that's kind of not good. And I've been teaching kids this song. Oh crap.
But like it's like I love that, right? Like that. Yeah. Like she starts learning, and like she's not pretentious at the very beginning. Like she's also like she's obviously not a child prodigy. She's just good at the violin, and I'm glad that that's the case because like I didn't want her to be like, oh, I must practice 5 hours for me to play the Mendelssohn violin concerto, right? I was like, okay, no. Like you're like above average, pretty good, right? You love what you're doing, and I like that.
Yeah.
And you're good enough that you have all the skills, but you're still open enough to learn a folk song. You know? Like she's not like, this is not Bach, you know?
Yeah.
So I like that.
And the fact at the end, there's that tiny little paragraph. It's like, when I landed back, I went and got therapy for my performance anxiety. I talked to my parents about it.
Yes.
Opened up and told people that I'm having these issues, and now I'm getting help. That was one of the big things at the end where, kids shove it in. But the fact that she went back and she's like, this is what I'm dealing with. And then she had all the support, which was a fantastic thing to read in a book. Yeah.
Yeah, that she had that confidence to talk to her parents. Because I think it wasn't that she was worried to tell them that she just froze at auditions. So she would just lie and be like, oh, no, I guess I wasn't good enough. And there was that worry. I think we were talking about that was kids just freezing and then so afraid of freezing that they just stop.
Yeah.
But she thought, oh, if I just practice more, it'll fix it. But no, she needed to have some guidance through it, and she needed to seek help.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was really happy with that too. It's just like the way that like she presented herself, and she was just like, if it's okay, I do have some anxiety.
Yeah.
And I have some time, right? And her therapist, and she said she had a therapist. She's like, the therapist was like, they're never gonna have an issue with that. They will give you your time. And it turned out they're like, no, please take your time, right? And it's like like sometimes it's just about asking, right? And telling people how it is. And they'll be open to it. They'll be kind, right? And I think that's a really great message for children, especially children that are struggling with anxiety, struggling with thinking that the world is constantly judging them and constantly thinking that they need to be perfect all the time, right?
Well, underlying shame, of like, why can't I just do this? Why can't I just get up there and perform like everybody else? Why can't I just do this math test when everybody else is? So it's strange how some kids have developed that as a thing, where nobody has ever said to them like, how dare you not do this on time? But for some reason in their head, they think I'm not good enough to finish this exam. Even if I did finish this test, I'm going to fail it anyway. So it is really cool that she put out there that like she went home and got help.
Yep. And it was nice that through her like experience in Tasmania, right, meeting Colin, someone who was also struggling with something, right, where they ended up helping each other and supporting each other, right, in ways that like, and the thing is like when you read about how he supported her, you're like, oh yeah, of course, but like because like he literally just said, just pretend we're not here.
Yeah.
Right. And she was just like, I had never thought about that. And you're like, you know what? Sometimes it just takes someone to remind you of something very simple.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, oh it's not that the problem isn't large. It is a large problem, but the solution can be very simple.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe it's just like her just focusing on something else instead of focusing on one thing. I was like, this is so great because he's struggling with this too, right? He wants friends. He's focusing so hard on wanting friends, but she helped him be like, don't focus on the wanting the friends, focus on whether or not they're genuine with you.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, it's so beautiful. And at that part, like at the end, like he's like, she's going on the plane and he's like to be exact, she's my best friend.
Yeah, it just like your heart like
she's crying. Oh yeah.
I love how open they are, because you like when you read adult books, you see these characters and they have these little white lies and truths, but with kids, and this is one of those believable things, kids are just like, they're just so honest. Like hilariously so in some ways. But the fact that Louisa came on and she's like, I failed 3 times. I couldn't do it. Every time I got up there, I froze up. And Colin's like, I don't have many friends because I don't know if they're my friend. Like that genuine, that innocence and just the honesty is really refreshing when you're reading about these characters.
I think that's a lesson that adults can have is In order to make friends, sometimes you do have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But it might end up being a really wonderful thing if you open up, someone else is able to open up, and you realize, oh, hey, we have something in common and we can help each other. That's really cool, really powerful, especially for kids to hear, but I think adults can hear that message
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Like the big thing that I learned from this was that, like, even if, let's say, I'm a parent one day or I'm a teacher one day, it's not my job to solve the problems of the kids 100%.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think what was going on was just like, I think Mel probably felt that guilty, right? That Colin didn't have friends, and she was like literally forcing Colin on Louise and be like, please be friends, right? Because she really loves her child.
Yeah.
But because she completely stepped away,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think she realized she was powerless to help him.
Yeah.
But that was a good thing, because it's not her job as a mom to help him every step of the way.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need other people to help you. Sometimes you need other people's influences, right? And I think that's also a good reminder is like, you're a parent, like, it's okay. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to always try your hardest, and just realize sometimes your children need friends, family, whatever around them, and they might influence them to do good and great things. And it doesn't diminish you as a parent, right? It just, like, you have to realize that sometimes you can't be 100% of what they need. Right? That's unfair for you. That's way too much pressure on you, and that's a lot of pressure on them as well.
And I think that's something that a lot of, I think, parents feel the need to do. Like, don't get me wrong, my mom was all up in the business for like a long time, but I think especially now with some of these some of the parents that have kids, especially in the elementary age, I know that their heart comes from the right place where they just want the best for their kid. But there are moments where I'm like, you need to let your kid breathe. You need to let go and let him or her fail a test or a quiz or fall down that rocky bench and scrape their knee because you can't protect them. I think that's that whole idea of like, I need to protect my kid, I need to shield my kid, I need to hide them from harm. Do you really need to? Some things, yeah. You're not going to toss your kid to, like, a murderer, but,
But wouldn't you rather have them learn those lessons while they're still a child?
Exactly.
And when they go out, they've moved out now, they're 20, and they just cannot cope with society because they never learned how to deal with all those emotions or things. Mom and dad always solved it for me.
Or even little things like, can you do your laundry? Can you make something other than scrambled eggs and cereal? Like those life skills that parents always tend to do for their children, which is great, and I love the support. But unless you actually want your kid to live with you forever and then hire them a nanny after you die, like these are necessary skills. Like I have friends, not friends, I've known people who like, I don't know how to use the vacuum cleaner. I'm like, how do you not know how to use the vacuum cleaner? You plug it in, you press the on button, and then you move it around. Like it's not rocket science, but that ability.
But the other thing for that is like, have you ever tried?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or are you waiting for somebody to be like, can I do that for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And I know like being a parent is so hard, which is why I don't really feel like I can ever be one. There's just so much pressure.
You can be a pet parent.
Yeah, but I agree with everything here. It's just like, just think like, I was just sharing with you guys about how I was like kind of like essentially like had a conversation with Philip, and he was like, why are you not charging the amount that you deserve to be charged, right? Confidence cannot be built by someone feeding it to you.
Yeah.
You can't take your parents' confidence and then grow it as your own. You have to build it up yourself, right? Like for Louisa to tell the adults in the room, I have an anxiety disorder, I need a few minutes. Mom and dad, I have anxiety, I need help with this, right? That will grow into her standing up for herself. right? And I know in this world we have misogyny, we have racism, we have all those things, and not diminishing the power that that has negatively on females, on people of color. But at the same time, I also believe that we ourselves hold a very, very strong part of our own destiny. And if we don't fight for ourselves, and if we do not, speak up for ourselves, we can't expect other people to do it for us forever, right? Like this is what stops people from asking for that raise, right? From like telling people, sorry, I feel like I am being harassed right now. You must stop, right? And speaking up for themselves. Like these are small things that children need to learn. It's okay to stand up for yourself. It's okay to be honest. It's okay to tell people you're being rude, please stay away. Yeah. Because this will be big lessons in the future for their self-confidence and the pride for themselves and their pride as a parent and the pride as their kids, right? Yeah. It just all ties in. Yeah.
I think in this book, it's interesting because we're pulling out all these like lessons and things that are learning opportunities. And I feel like she's shielded them well so that you don't think they're lessons. And I've said this about my mom, where I'm like, oh, you tricky little woman, you taught me a lesson, but you didn't actually come out and say, this is your lesson. I learned this like 20 years later, where I'm like, oh, she taught me this when I was like 12. Okay, then. And it's one of those things where you read it, you take it in, and then you realize, or you don't realize that you've grown from it and you learn from it. And I think that's one of the great things about this book is that there's so many things that you can learn from it without actually like learning.
Yeah, because like, essentially the verbiage and the grammar is different, right? It's like as a younger person reading this, you read Louisa and you're like, oh, she's asking for help. Yeah. As an older person, you're like, she's showing her vulnerability. Yeah. Right. That's where I think that what Karen was saying is just like that's what's great about these really well written books for children is that everyone can learn. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, this book was amazing.
I like this. This is, I think, one of the 2 or 3 ones where we all like just really enjoyed it.
It was just from the get-go. Like what Karen said, from the get-go, I was like, oh yes, this is amazing. And I love the kind of palindrome they had. Like at the very beginning, she didn't notice the scenery. Yeah. But then as she's leaving, she's like, I don't want to leave this place. Like everything is so beautiful, and like everything is like it's like her perspective completely changes, right? Yeah. And for me, the perspective really changed when she got lost in the forest trying to look for the Southern Cross, and she realized she was looking backwards. Yeah. And she did like a 180, and that's like for me was where her like yeah. I was like, oh, look at this. Is this where like is this figurative? Like she's turning her life around, like because at that point. Like she sees everything starts changing. She's okay with the huntsman spider, right, in her room, right? I was like, yeah. Oh, so like it's like, like she just turned, quote unquote, turned her life around.
Yeah. And I really like, I forgot who said it in the book. I think it was Uncle Ruff who said it, when they're like, when we think things are extinct, they may not be, but it's better that we think that they are so that they can just be away from humans.
Yeah, well, and that's like going into that kind of like the realism of the story. Yeah. Like he's a vet, right? Yep. So he understands animals, and there was that one part where like they finally capture what is the Tasmanian tiger's name?
Ellie or Shadow?
Is it Ellie? The one that was on the Convict Rock, right? Yeah. And she's like, and Lewis is like, can I touch her? And he's like, no, you can't. The less human contact, the better, because if other Tasmanian tigers smell human scent on her, she might not be as desirable, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, see, that is true. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like that is absolutely true. You don't want that's why like if you see like a chick and you put them back in the nest, you've actually changed the smell. They become foreign, right? Like I was like, but that is like things that like children might not understand. Mm-hmm. But like that is absolutely in that moment real, right? Yeah. And it's like, yeah, of course, like she wants to know where Ellie is, but she can't. For Ellie's safety, they have to give her to the elders because the elders are trusted to be silent. Yeah, yeah. It has to be the elders. We can't put her into and this is why, right? This is why he fought so hard to not have like the bodies be dissected for the scientific community, because he didn't want more information because he understands human nature. Yeah. Right. And like that realism is just like that part was like, your jobs are done now. You two get on the boat, go back to the camp, and wait for us.
Yeah.
You're not going to save the world like Katniss. You're not going to do all that stuff, right? You
Like-
played the violin. You've been here.
Yeah.
Your job is over, right?
Yeah.
Time to go and wait for us and be safe. The less people involved, the better.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
And I was like, I love this, right? And the fact that she understood why. She wanted to be there, but she understood why she had to leave. And I was like, that's great because like you can learn so many different lessons at different ages just by reading that moment, right? It's like what Karen said, right? Your small moment means a lot, but it's still a small moment, right? But without you, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna go in my library someday when I go back to school.
Yeah, I'm like wondering if I should just like donate this to like one of the inner city schools here, just have them read it. Maybe one of those schools that I used to play piano in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, are you looking for a piano? Because my friend's like neighbor is trying to get rid of their upright. If you know anybody that wants one.
In Victoria?
I know it's in Langley,
Oh.
but like
We can talk offline, but
Yeah.
I'm always looking for pianos.
just saying.
Yeah. But, anyways, great pick.
Woo!
Beautiful book, written
Love
very well. Very happy. I mean, like just like Governor General's award finalist. Yeah, I mean,
Makes sense.
you deserve to be a gold finalist. This is an amazing book. Very
Yeah.
well.
Very well done. Good job, Karen.
Amazing.
I think that was our first children's, right?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of firsts. We're doing a lot of firsts because like we did our first like graphic novel, right?
Yeah.
And then this is our first children's book. Like yeah, we've been doing a lot of firsts lately. I tried to do a first, but I was like I couldn't. Like I was gonna ask you guys to. Okay, so next pick is mine. I was actually trying to see if I could procure a bunch of manga because there are a few manga that are classical music themed. Unfortunately, for those of us who read manga, we understand that a series is in multiple volumes.
Yeah.
Too expensive, and I couldn't find a library where it was legal for you to actually read it for free. So instead, I decided to find a book. It's a short book as well, but the book is called Marrying Mozart by Stephanie Cowell. And I'll just read the like synopsis here quickly for you guys. But it's Amadeus meets Little Women in this irresistibly delightful historical novel by award-winning author Stephanie Cowell. The year is 1777, and the four Weber sisters, daughters of a musical family, share a crowded, artistic life in a ramshackle house. While their father scrapes by as a music copyist and their mother secretly draws up a list of prospective suitors in the kitchen, the sisters struggle with their futures, both marital and musical, until 21-year-old Wolfgang Mozart walks into their lives, bringing 18th century Europe to life with unforgiving winters, yawning princes, scheming parents, and the enduring passions of young talent. Stephanie Cowell's richly textured tale captures a remarkable historical figure and the four young women who engage his passion, his music, and his heart.
Ooh.
I read the Amadeus meets Little Women. I was like, all right, we're doing this. Yeah, so there you go. It's like 350 pages-ish. For the Penguin one, it's less if you buy a different edition.
Okay.
But I thought like I mean, it's not really a period piece, but like, you know, it's Mozart. You know, we did Mozart's Blood earlier, right? Now.
Oh God, Mozart's Blood. Let's pink on the cover.
Yeah. So there you go. Something short. I read the first couple of pages because they had previews on them. They're cute. It's very Little Women. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll be fun to read. Hopefully we'll have some differing opinions on this one so we can have a little bit of a fight. There you go. So that'll pick for next time. We'll figure out when we meet next time. But I think we're good for this hangout. This was fun.
Yeah. Great book. Yeah. Awesome.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys soon. Have a good rest of your summer. Goodbye.
Bye.